Welcome back to my next video. I know it's been quite a while since I made a video, and that's because life just got super busy for a while. I've been wanting to get back and continue on with John chapter 6 so that I can finish up this passage I started in verse 25, and today, hopefully, I'll be doing that. I had already translated through verse 32, and so now we're starting back up with verse 33. I'm going to continue to put up the modern Greek alongside the Koine when it's similar, as it happens to be quite a bit in these three verses that we're going to be looking at in this video. So let's get going with John chapter 6 verse 33. I'm going to read from the Koine text first. O gar artos tu theu estin o katavenon ek tu uranu ke zoin vidus to cosmo. And here is the modern Greek for the same verse. Επειδή ο άρτος του Θεού είναι αυτός που καταβαίνει από του ουρανό και δίνει ζωή στον κόσμο. So, looking at the first phrase here in Koine and in modern, you'll see that they are very similar. I have them up on the screen right now. And O artos is the bread, with O being the definite article the. And then tu theu is of God, and tu is just the article in the genitive, and theu is o theos, which means God, in the genitive. So that's the bread of God. And then estin is the verb to be, which we've seen before in Koine, which means it is. And that same verb in modern is ine, which is, to me anyway, looks similar, but you can have your own opinion about that. And then the main difference here is the word gar in Koine and επειδή in modern. These are both conjunctions, and we've seen gar before in Koine. It means for or then, and we have also seen that it never comes first. It's never the first word in a sentence, but it comes second after the first little word or big word. And then in modern we have επειδή, which means kind of basically the same thing. As I said, these are conjunctions, so it's kind of like επειδή would mean since, because. So it's just like a word that continues on from what has just followed in the previous sentences. And modern Greek's got its own little conjunctions that it prefers, and Koine had theirs, which is pretty typical, I think, for languages. Those change, like in English, we say like a lot, which people didn't used to say. And then there's other little words like that people say maybe when they just want to continue a thought, or they're not sure like what they want to say next, really. Not to imply that the New Testament writers didn't know what they were going to say, but I'm just saying they would have used the language that was current at the time, with the conjunctions that were current at the time. So at the end of the previous verse, Jesus said, the true bread is the bread that his Father gives out of heaven. And then here the conjunction just indicates, for the bread of God is. So it's kind of like continuing on. So that's what this little bit here means, for the bread of God is. And then we have in Koine, O katavenon ek tu uranu ke zoin vidus to cosmo. And in modern we have Αυτός που κατεβαίνει από του ουρανού και δίνει ζωή στον κόσμο. So you'll see some words here that are the same, but the structure of how this thought is conveyed is a little different. In Koine, we have O katavenon ek tu uranu, and katavenon here is a present active participle, which means coming down, and it functions as a noun. We've seen this lots before. In Koine, there are a lot of participles which function as nouns. So, because it's functioning as a noun, it has that definite article in front of it, o. So it literally means the coming down. But in the context of the sentence, which we've already seen starts out, the bread of God is. So the bread of God is the coming down, or that which is coming down. And then ek tu uranu, which means out of heaven. Ek, out of, and then we have, well, out from, I guess from. And then we have tu uranu, which is the genitive form of uranos, which means sky or heaven, because ek takes the genitive. The corresponding phrase in modern Greek has a structure more like how we would say it in English, so it will just look a lot more familiar when I explain it. And the phrase in modern Greek is Αυτός που κατεβαίνει από τον ουρανό. So we see the same words here, the same verb, kataveno, which means to come down, I come down, and then urano, from uranos, same word for sky or heaven. But what's different is that we don't have a participle here. So kataveni just means it is coming down. And so aftos is this. So we have, and pu just means, pu can mean a lot of things. It can mean where, but here it means that. So we have this, that is coming down, literally. Aftos, this, pu, which, kataveni is coming down. So, as I just said, that's not a participle, it's the present active form of the verb. And then apo is from. Po takes the accusative form of the following noun, which the accusative here is ton urano in modern Greek. So, continuing the thought, in Koine we have ke zoin vidus to kosmo. And ke means and, as we've seen. Zoin is the object of the next word, which is vidus. And this, again, so it's kind of like a parallel construction, because vidus is also a participle, just like katavenon was. So it's the coming down, and that was katavenon, and then we have vidus, the giving. So this is the present active participle of the verb didomi, which means I give. So this is giving, functioning as a noun, just like katavenon. So it's the coming down and the giving, both referring back to the bread. And then zoin is life, the accusative form, since it's the object of give, it's what's being given. And then we have to kosmo, which is the dative of o kosmos, the world. So it's to the world. And continuing that thought on in the modern Greek, we have ke dini zoe ston kosmo. So it's the exact same thing, but again, the structure is the modern Greek structure, which we just saw is the present form of the verb, not the participle. So we have ke, and then we have dini, which is it gives. So that's the form of the verb dino, which is I give in modern Greek, the third person singular. So we have and it gives. Zoe, that is the accusative form of life in modern Greek. There's no ni on the end here. So in modern Greek, you'll have that ni on the end of the article when it's accusative, but often not on the end of the actual noun. But that is accusative. And then because modern Greek doesn't have a dative case, it needs to have a preposition plus the accusative. So we have se, which means to, but it's contracted here with the definite article ton to form stone. So that's to the accusative. And then cosmo, world. So to the world. Again, and cosmo is accusative, but without the ni. So to recap, verse 33 in translation, we have, for the bread of God is that which comes down out of heaven and gives life to the world. Then verse 34 in Koine, Ipon un prosavton, Kyrie, pandote dos imin tonarton tuton. And in modern, tu ipan lipon, Kyrie, dose mas pandote tuton ton arto. So when they, the multitude, are speaking to Jesus, you see that sentence is very, very similar. But backing up to the introduction, it's a little bit different. Ipon prosavton means exactly what tu ipan means, which is they said to him. And you see the verb there, they said, in Koine has the ending en, and in modern has the ending on. And that's because there were two sets of aorist endings in Koine, as I've said before in previous videos, and they got collapsed into one set of aorist endings in modern. So that on ipon is just from the other set of aorist endings. So that is they said. And then pros afton, and pros means to or towards. And afton means him. It's the accusative of aftos, which is he. And then in the modern, we have to, meaning to him. It is the genitive of the pronoun he, and it's genitive because it's the indirect object of the verb. And then we have another one, or two, I guess, actually, of these kind of conjunctions, which are different, as I said before, in Koine and in modern. So the conjunction in Koine is un, which means therefore, and then lipon in modern, which means various things like so or then or therefore, right, well. It means a lot in modern. You'll see it thrown in a lot when people speak. But lipon is actually from the Koine lipon, and in Koine that means remaining or the rest. So it's like, again, it's a conjunction. It's just like, so, like therefore, continuing on. And that word is different in the two, in the Koine and the modern. We've got un in Koine and lipon in modern. And then what they said to Jesus in Koine, Kyrie, pandote dos imin ton arton tuton. And in modern, it's pretty much exactly the same with just a few small differences. So Kyrie means Lord or Master, and that's the vocative, the way you would call somebody. Pandote, always. Thos, that is the imperative or command of give. Imin, to us, it's the dative of imis, which is we. Ton arton, and that is the bread accusative, because it's the object of give. Tuton, this. So, Lord, always give us this bread, or forevermore give us this bread. And pandote is literally pan, which means all, and then tote, which means then, or at that time. So it's like all at that time, or all times, pandote, always, or evermore. So what they said to Jesus in modern is pretty much the same. I have them both on the screen now, and you'll see the word order is just a little different. So pandote and tuton are in different places in the sentence. And then the other differences are just that the imperative of to give is different. So it's dose in modern Greek, which just means give, a command, and that there has the closed stem of the verb dino, I give, which we just saw in the previous verse. And then mas is to us instead of imin. And then the only other difference is we have ton arto instead of ton arton. And as I just mentioned, modern Greek, you'll see the ni on the article when it's accusative, but not oftentimes not on the noun. And finally, we have verse 35 in Koine. Ipen aftis o Isus, ero imi o artos tis suis, o erchomenos proseme umi pinasi, ke opistevon is eme umi dipsisi popote. And verse 35 in modern. Ke o Isus ipe prosaftus, ero ime o artos tis suis, opios erchete semena then tha pinasi, ke opios pistevi semena then tha dipsasi pote. So the first portion in Koine and Modern, which is on the screen, you can see it's very similar here. Just a couple differences. Ke in the Modern just means and it's just a continuation of the thought from the previous sentence. And then we have Jesus, o Isus, and he says. That's the same verb there pretty much. The only difference is that the Koine has ni on the end, which is movable. It's not always there in the third person ending. Usually it's there when the next word starts with a vowel, as it does here, but at other times it shows up as just ipe, just like in the modern for he said. And then we have to them, which is a little different in the two versions. And in Koine, to them is aftis, which is the dative of them. So it's literally to them. Because modern Greek has no dative, instead this meaning is conveyed by pros, which we saw means to. It's a preposition, and then aftus, them, is the genitive form because it needs to be after that preposition. The next sentence, which is on the screen, I'm going to read it in the Koine, but you can see it's with one little exception, the same in modern. I'll read it in Koine. Ero imi o artos tis zois. And the only difference there is that we have ime. In modern, this is I am. We've seen this before. And I'm thinking I don't need to translate this, but I will really quickly because we've essentially seen this before. Ego, I am, imi, the bread of life. Artos, bread, zois, life, and then that's the genitive of life. In the final part of this verse, we have a difference in structure between the Koine and the modern, just like the difference we saw earlier, where Koine uses a participle functioning as a noun as the subject of the verb, and modern, more like English, uses just a pronoun as the subject of the verb. We see this first with o erchomenos, which means literally the coming, or so erchome means I come, and erchomenos is the present active participle, so it's the one who comes. That's the meaning, but as I said, literally, it's the coming. And then pros eme means to me, and eme is the emphatic form of the accusative of me. The emphatic form is used after prepositions, as we see here, and also used for contrasting, which is probably functioning that way here also. And then we have u, me. Both of those are negating words, so it's a very strong negative. And pinasi, which is from the verb pinao, which means I hunger. It's the exact same verb in Koine and in modern. And here, interestingly, when I kind of, I looked at this word and kind of confirmed its conjugation, it says it's subjunctive, which it is with that ending on it. But what I find interesting, and we'll see in a bit, is the parallel verb thirst, which we'll come to in a minute, dipsisi, is in the future. And this is an interesting one because it's a parallel construction. Jesus is saying, he who comes to me will not hunger, and he who believes in me will not thirst. So the endings on hunger and thirst here are different. They're on the screen. And just hold that thought, because I'm going to come back and talk about this after I'm done translating this verse. It's really interesting. So now the corresponding phrase in modern is, as I said before, the structure is more similar to English. Instead of that participle functioning as a noun for he who comes, we have an actual pronoun, opios, meaning any or whoever. Erchete, comes, and that's the same verb. So we have erchete, meaning he comes, present, active, but the verb is the same verb that erchomenos is formed from. And then semena is to me in modern, and we just have that emphatic form of the pronoun me, the accusative emphatic form mena. Then thapinasi means he will not hunger. Then is a negating particle, the negating particle in modern, which has a very interesting history. I'll talk about some other time how it comes from Koine. And then tha, the little word that introduces future, and pinasi from the same verb pinao we saw in Koine, meaning I hunger. Okay, back to the final bit in Koine. Ke opistevon is and, K. Opistevon is the participle from pistevo, which means I believe. So the believing one. Is, in, eme, me, emphatic again. And then we have u, mi, the two negating words for a strong negation. Dipsisi, this is from the verb dipsao in Koine, which means I thirst. And the form of this verb here is future because it's the future form. It's got the closed stem and the present endings. And then popote, ever, but it's used only with negative words. So in conjunction with the negative, it means never. So together that's and he who believes in me will never thirst. And the modern for this part is just parallel. So again, this is parallel. He who comes to me will not hunger. He who believes in me will not thirst. So we see this same construction that we saw in modern for he who comes to me. Now we have he who believes in me. Ke opios pistevi se mena, and who, opios, pistevi, he believes, se in mena, me, emphatic, just like we just saw. And then we have then for not, or it's the negating particle. Tha marks the future. Dipsasi will not thirst. And this is the exact same verb, dipsao, that we saw in Koine. And pote, which means never. So verse 35 in its entirety with the Koine text on the screen is, Jesus said to them, I am the bread of life. He who comes to me will not hunger, and he who believes in me will never thirst. A final comment, as I promised, on the words pinasi and dipsisi in the Koine. They're on the screen. Umi pinasi, umi dipsisi. As we just saw, a parallel construction, and you'd expect both of those verbs to be in the same tense and mood. In English translation they are, in the Greek translation they are. But interestingly here, the pinasi has the ida on the end, which marks it as subjunctive, and dipsisi has the epsilon iota on the end, which marks it as future. So you got two choices here. Either those spellings are intentional, which means that one verb is in the subjunctive and the other's in the future. Now, of course, both of those make sense. Subjunctive just means something that is projected to happen. So, but it's not certain. Although Jesus here he is certain, so it would make more sense to have them both future. But like with those endings, if those endings are intentional, they're not. One's subjunctive and the other's future. Now the other alternative, which makes sense in a lot more ways, is that ending there sounds the same, and so the person who wrote it down just got kind of mixed up or whatever. They heard the sound E and they knew it could be spelled both ways, so they did it one way one time and one way the other time. And if this is the case, this is an example of the evidence that I talked about way back in an earlier video of these spelling interchanges, which are indications that the pronunciation of Koine was pretty much similar to modern or Neo-Hellenic Greek. It was not different. Those vowels were not pronounced differently. In the Erasmian pronunciation, eta and epsilon iota are pronounced differently, and in this situation that would lead to a pretty odd conclusion. Alright, so that's the end. Thank you for watching, and I would love to get another video out soon. I do have some travels coming up, so maybe a little while. But thank you again. Bye.